month. I don't know if he was entertainer or not. I think he had something to do with history.
Yeah, I think you're referring to the Vicente Fernandez statue, if I remember correctly.
Maybe so. I can't remember. I don't
Yeah,
recall.
yeah, I think he was recently given a statue, and
Yeah,
also,
just recently. Yes, recently.
and I think in
In
a
April,
street,
I think. Yeah,
in a street, I think was named after him in Boyle Heights as well.
yeah.
So,
Well,
yeah.
I'm from Boyle Heights. He was in junior high school.
Yeah, Miss Lois representing.
Yeah, I represent.
I appreciate that. I was with. All right, so we've got, I think, the majority of our people here. And as we kind of groove to the sounds of Los Relámpagos del Norte, I think we'll go ahead and get the journey going because we got a lot to cover today. And I just for everybody that's already in the Zoom, just know that we are already live streaming, and in a moment here we're going to begin the recording. So give me a quick second while we get all that situated. And there is the robot letting us know that the recording is in progress. So welcome everyone. We are here now with our third lesson of the current Conchas y Café series. For anybody joining in on the live stream, watching either on our YouTube channel, on our Facebook channel, or Instagram too, I think. I forget all the different things. Oh yeah, Twitter's the other one. We are able to obviously, take your questions if you're watching the live stream. For anybody that is actually in the live Zoom, you guys are obviously always welcome to raise your hand and let me know if you have any questions. This recording will go live on our YouTube channel as well tomorrow at some point in the afternoon, so you'll be able to watch anything that you might have missed. But to get us going, as usual, we have our what's it called? Our quote of the week. And if you have already downloaded the handout, you'll know that it comes from Nina George, who is a German writer, best known as the author of The Little Paris Bookshop. And Nina George is quoted as saying, often it's not we who shape words, but the words we use that shape us. Y para los hispanohablantes, para los que están acompañándonos hoy y prefieren leer en español, aquí tenemos la cita que viene de Nina George y dice, seguido no somos nosotros quienes forman a las palabras, sino son las palabras que usamos que forman a nosotros. So, what do you all think about this particular quote that we are looking at this week? What speaks to you here?
I agree to that. I was speaking to my son today, and he's always trying to chastise mom. He tells me you're how do you say, spectacular mom and blah, 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 blah. And so I hear, but I haven't grasped it, but I've been feeling kind of down. I'm trying to make it short as possible. And so I thought about what he was saying today. And so I says that I'm intelligent, I'm creative, I'm strong, a strong Black woman. And so words, when you spit them out into the atmosphere, you can be negative or positive, and you can, how do you say, be your own cheerleader if you use the right words.
Yeah, I think that's a very very empowering thing to consider, right? If we use disparaging words against ourselves, then we're going to feel down, right? We're going to feel kind of bad about, ourselves, our skills, whatever. And yeah, if we're more positive in our language, then we will feel more positive. Yeah, that's a good observation. Gia, I see you raised your hand.
Yes. Hi, everybody. I think it also speaks to the intent of words. And, my mom always used to tell the story about how this woman goes to confession and she tells the priest, she's like, "Oh, Father, I'm so sorry, but I've been gossiping about my neighbor." So he tells her to go up on top of the mountain and take a down pillow and cut it and spread the feathers out. Then he tells her to go and collect all the feathers. And she's like, "Father, I can't do that." And he goes, "Neither can you go collect all your words once they're out." So I think it speaks to that, that our words are oftentimes show more of a reflection of who we are and what our intent is.
Yeah, I think intention is, especially for us as writers, something to very much be aware about. Las intenciones que tenemos en las palabras que usamos no solo afectan a nosotros, sino también a nuestros lectores. That's a very important thing for us to consider as writers, is that whatever it is that we choose to use in terms of a word and a poem, that's going to very much impact the perception of a reader on, whatever message you're giving. So yeah, that's a good observation. Thank you, Gia. Mojde wrote in the chat, "The words that we use are the state of our mind." Yeah, definitely. I think in my maybe more depressed states, I'm sure that I've used words that reflect that slightly pessimistic, attitude that I've had in the past with regards to my emotional well-being. So yeah, that's a good observation as well. Thank you, Mojde. ¿Alguien más gusta? Yes, Abraham.
Well, just because we've been doing this for so long, I think I always look into words and how they basically shape the world, right? And that's we as writers, especially poets, we always thinking how we use them and how other people use them. And I think it goes both ways. Is we shape the words and the words shapes us. And I think the big factor is when we know these two things, we're able to stop and reflect before we actually speak or start using words that basically are making harm, right? Because there's a lot of words that, especially if you repeat them all the time, either you affecting other people or yourself, especially words that are demeaning, right? Especially for yourself, like, "Oh, I'm an idiot," and all of this and that. And then just by repeating them, it becomes true.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think that ties into what Diana wrote in the chat as well. We can curse with our words, or we can manifest great things to our lives. Words are energy. And I think that that's more or less what Abraham is expressing too. They have an energy. They have a very real impact on a lot of different things, not just our mental health and our physical health, but the mental and physical health of other people too. Think about things that have happened over the last maybe 6 years now at this point, where fake news was creating animosity towards people and dividing us as a country, as a community. And that's all because of words, and what kind of value we put on certain words over others. So that's a whole lot of things for us to consider, again, as writers, because pues aquí todos somos poetas. And so as poets, we owe it to ourselves to understand that there is an energy and a purpose behind every word that we choose. And that even goes so far as to, the sounds of the words that we're choosing too. Miss Michelle wrote in the chat, "The words are like tree branches. They are in different shapes, age, and growth. How they are perceived and used is up to you and your audience." Right. It's a very good observation. So to kind of do a quick overview over the last few sessions, we started off by talking about onomatopoeia and how onomatopoeia was basically our ancestors' way of creating words out of or in response to the natural sounds that they experienced, right? The sound of a lion roaring. So they created the word roar, or whatever variation of it at the time. Then we talked about how languages are constructed. You know, Abraham gave us a really interesting lesson on constructed languages and the ways in which we can borrow from different languages to create a new language for ourselves. And that was very much about, you know, thinking in terms of sound, right? What are the sounds that form different emotional connections to language? And to go a little bit further into that, we're going to get into what's called a diphthong. And for those of you that might be familiar with the linguistic term, a diphthong is slightly different based on the language that you speak. So what that means is, for our handout here, especialmente para los que están acompañándonos, si prefieren en español, el diptongo es un poco diferente y se distingue en español o castellano al diptongo en inglés. So we're going to dedicate, I think, a larger part of our time tonight on the English diphthong, but I will reference the Spanish definition of diphthong and what it means for anyone writing in Spanish. Although, again, you know, this is something that is universal across all human languages. All human languages have vowels and consonants, and that's really what it comes down to when it comes down to diphthongs and the phoneme that we talked about before and all of that. So, para empezar, the diphthong in English, is considered a monosyllabic speech sound, such as the vowel combination at the end of toy, oi, right? And it starts at or near the articulatory position. And what we mean by articulatory position is the way in which your mouth and your tongue form or shape themselves to reproduce the sound associated with a letter, in this case, a vowel. And the way that we kind of bring the sound of two vowels together to create one single sound, right? It's like I put right here, a blending of vocalizations. Igual en español. En español, el diptongo es lo mismo, es un vocal que se pronuncia, o sea, son dos vocales que se pronuncian como si fueran una misma sílaba. Aquí tenemos, como ven, los vocales, right? Our vowels in English and in Spanish are A, E, O, I, and U. It's very important that we understand that our pronunciation for the vowels are going to be different based on the languages that we speak. In Spanish, it would be A, E, O, I, U, right? In English, we say A, E, I, O, U. Right? There's a different way in which we shape our mouth and our tongue to make these sounds that are called vowels. Y aquí tienen en español las diferentes combinaciones junto con unos ejemplos para que vean qué es lo que significa un diptongo en español. In English, because English is in many, many ways a blending of multiple languages, we have a lot of different kinds of diphthongs that are considered sort of like the standard diphthongs, right? And they each have their own phonetic symbol, and they use the Greek alphabet to, Greek Latin alphabet to sort of represent the sound, the phonetic sound, right? So in this first one, it would be I, which in English is often spelled with just the letter I, the IGH, or the Y, the letter Y. The examples would be crime, light, bite, right? So you have the long I, where your mouth is more open. Then you have the A, I think it's epsilon and ypsilon, which is in English usually spelled with either the EA, EY, AY, AI, or the letter A by itself. And then again, we have some examples. Break, pray, pray, braid, and ache. Right. So you're sort of elongating your mouth. You're making your mouth a little bit wider to pronounce the A sound, a flat A. We also have the O sound, which is sometimes with the OW, sometimes with the OA, or in the case of certain words, OUGH, right? So we have slow, moan, do. Best way for you to understand how these diphthongs work is to just kind of pay close attention to the way your mouth moves, right? These are different ways in which we vocalize. To continue, we have the ow, and that's where you go from the O to the U, typically, and in some cases, OW. So hound, crown, it's like the ow way of pronouncing that sort of O, that long O. Then there's the A, which is AI or EA, like lair, bear, right? Air. And when we have the E sound, sort of like a flat, long E, which is in English a lot of times spelled as EE, IE, or EA, such as jeer, peer, or near. You'll notice that a lot of times these have the R coming after them to give you that ear sound, right? The E. Then there's the oi, as in boy or oil, right? It's like a very open O. And then, of course, U, as in pure, the U, or. En español, obviamente es un poco diferente, porque aquí tenemos, como digo, varios ejemplos de cómo se combinan los vocales para formar un solo sílaba, como aire, causa, peine, ceuta, oiga, uy, ¿verdad? Así que si vamos pronunciando cada diptongo, sería ay, au, ei, eu, oi, u, ya, ie, yo, ua, we, uo. Por eso tenemos aquí como ahuehuete, right? And those sort of open vowel sounds are different. O sea, se distinguen los vocales abiertos o diptongos abiertos de vocal abierto a los que son cerrados, que se forman usando las letras I y U. O sea, we o you. Y aquí tienen como, por ejemplo, ruido, ruina, diurno, diurético. El you, donde se cierra un poco más la boca para pronunciar esa sílaba, ese diptongo. In Spanish, you also have to consider the fact that these different diphthongs do affect the actual spelling and the use of accent marks. Por eso aquí tenemos esta tabla donde enseña cómo se usa los acentos, los tildes, sobre vocales en diferentes palabras. Y pues, como no soy experto en la gramática en español, aquí simplemente les puse las reglas de cómo se usan las acentuaciones, perdón. In English, we don't have these diacritical marks. We don't have the tilde. We don't have the ñ that goes over the little squiggle that goes over the N. We don't have that. So we have to think of things more in the sense of just grammatical rules to understand the emphasis or the accentuation that we would use in spoken English, which is where things like the digraph comes in, right? A digraph in the English language is essentially the same thing as in Spanish, but here we have other sort of things to consider, right? A digraph in English is a group of two successive letters whose phonetic value is a single sound. So it's very similar to the diphthong, right? The diphthong is, like in this case, the EA, as in bread. We don't necessarily say bread, we say bread, that forms a single sound. It also includes, in this case, consonants, anything that is not a vowel, like the ng sound in sing. And those get kind of lumped together as letters, the letter sounds or the phonetic sounds, they get lumped together to form a digraph. Again, you have another example right here, the ch sound, which is a combination of the t and the sh, right? So if you put the ch together, it ends up sounding very similar to ch, which is more commonly spelled as a ch, all right? I hope I'm not boring you guys, but these are ways in which we kind of are able to understand how sounds can create certain feelings and emotions in the words that we choose. Remember, we might form the words, but words can also form us, right? So common consonant digraphs that are different from the diphthongs, which are all about the vowel sounds. Consonant digraphs that we often see are things like the ch, as in choose or channel, chirp, chase. And there's the sh, sh, the sh, which gives us shoe, show, shall, shawl. Then there's the voiced, right? And that means that we're very deliberately putting our tongue on our front teeth to make a sound, right? If you blow, you'll hear it more, like though, that, this, then. That means that it's voiced, right? So it's much more pronounced. Then there's also the unvoiced, which can be a little bit more subdued, even though we still put our tongue on our teeth to form the th sound. It's a little bit less obvious, like theme, thought, thimble, right? It's a very soft way of hearing the th sound. There's also the th in the middle, which is voiced. So it would sound like th, dither, bother, mother, or rather. If you add that extra emphasis, you'll start to understand how your mouth is moving and where your tongue is pressing up against your teeth and when it's not. And then there's the th at the end of a word, which is unvoiced, such as path, bath, teeth, cloth. Right? It's a very softer th sound. Then there's the ph, which has a f sound, right? It sounds like an f, like phone, photo, phrenology. These are just ways in which in English we have to understand that the ph combination makes the f sound, which in most other languages you'll find that that's a bit easier to understand. There's also the voiced wh. That's something that you might hear maybe a little bit more in other areas of the United States. Here on the West Coast, we don't quite hear it as much, but it would be things like where, what, why, whale, or while, right? The wh. You're kind of opening your mouth and blowing from the back of your throat. Almost like a silent whistle. There's also the silent consonant digraphs, and these are the silent W or the silent N in things like the KN or the GN. The GH, the H would be silent in this case. So the WR would be like rap, wrong, right, wrinkle, right? The WR combination is a digraph. The KN, knife, no, knack, knuckle. You just hear the you don't hear a k, like the K would normally sound, right? It just totally gets lost to the n. The same goes with the GN, right? You don't say gna or gnat, you say gnaw, gnat, gnarly, or gnash. And kind of the same here with the H, it's a silent H in ghost, ghastly, ghee, or ghoul, right? G. Then there's the CK, which in this particular case is the same sound, just repeated, right? The C makes a K sound, and the K also makes a K sound. So when it's combined together, it just makes the universal or the monosyllabic K, right? Trick, rock, rack, knock. The GN can also be seen at the end of words. So things like benign, sign, design, assign. Oftentimes you'll see that combined with the letter I. Then there's comb, right? It's MB, right? The MB. If you were to actually pronounce just the M and the B, you get M and B, right? But when you kind of push your lips together to form both sounds, it just blends together. So it goes comb, tomb, limb, climb, crumb. You know, you don't even necessarily pronounce the B. And then of course the NG, which we already discussed, and then the NK. So rink, you can barely hear the N, but it's still there. Rink, stink, sink, crank, sank. And then the famous Germanic F, right? This is where the German influence in English comes in. So the GH at the end of a word will oftentimes sound like the F sound. Tough, rough, trough, cough. A lot of times it's, you know, preceded by the OU, the oof. Yes, and pink is another example of the NK digraph. En español, como pueden ver, existen los dígrafos. Igual, es un grupo de dos letras que están representadas por un solo sonido. En el caso del español, estos dígrafos, el ch, el eye y el doble R, a veces se cuentan como parte del alfabeto en español, a veces no, depende de la región o de la persona a veces. Pero esos son los más comunes que se reconocen y forman cosas como, pues hay que decir chasco, hilacha, echar, fecha, chicharrón, chato, mechas, hacha, ¿verdad? El che, igual como mi apellido, Pichardo. Luego el doble L, el eye, llega siendo llenar, llaga, rodilla, cordillero, llovizna, cebolla. Lo interesante del doble L es que el doble L, en lugar de tener un sonido distinto, tiene el mismo sonido que la letra Y, que también tiene el Y, el sonido de Y. Pero en este caso, en ciertas palabras, se utiliza en vez de una Y, el doble L. Igual como el doble R. Tiene el mismo sonido que el R singular, pero el doble R da como un poco más de énfasis. Y como ven aquí, siempre es empleado entre dos vocales y nunca al inicio de una palabra. Aquí tienen como por ejemplo, bancarrota, corrupto, irrespirable, arrastrar, derrochar. Y como ven, cada una de las palabras tiene un vocal antes y después del doble R. Más arrastré. Yeah. Luego también existe el U y el Q, a donde no suena la letra U en español. En este caso solo se pronuncia la letra G como G y aquí típicamente sigue un vocal. En este caso, guiso, guerra, águila, guión, ¿verdad? Solo se oye el G y luego el vocal que sigue. Gui, ge, gi, ge. Así es como se usa este dígrafo. Y muy similar, el Q, también que tiene el sonido de K, o igual como el C, se usan típicamente con los vocales y la letra Q llega como mezclándose junto con el vocal. En este caso sería como quiso o cacique, embarqué, química, máquina, quílate, quetzal, quebrado o tequila, mi favorito. So, any questions so far about digraphs or diphthongs? It's very important to think of the sounds, right? Abraham?
So would you say the diphthongs will be the vowels and the other ones, the graphs, diagraphs will be the basically the
Consonants.
sorry, the consonants.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's basically what sets them apart, right? Is that a digraph is most typically characterized as the consonants, whereas the diphthongs are for the vowels. Although, technically speaking, a vowel combination like the EA in bread, as you can see here, that is also called a digraph, but it's considered a diphthong because it's a vowel sound that gets sort of mushed together, we'll call it. And that way it can form either the A sound or the E sound, right? So the EA can be a diphthong and a digraph at the same time, in the same way that the EY or the AY. But yeah, to not confuse you too much, you can just at the very basic understand that a diphthong is the vowels and the digraphs are the consonants. And so all words are made up of vowels and consonants, and all words are a combination of diphthongs and digraphs all together to make whatever it is that we want it to make, right? Think of an onomatopoeia, kapow, right? The kapow. You know, you have two syllables, and each syllable has a combination of a consonant sound and a vowel sound, right? The ka, ka, to give you that, and then the pow, the p to sort of give you that like punch, and the ow to give you that reaction, you know, of getting punched. You can think of it in that way, right? Yeah, to answer Moshe's question, this is a linguistic explanation of the lesson. Yes, as simply as I can put it, because you know linguistics can get very complex, you know, given the different types of terms that they use, the different vocabulary that they have. That's what we would call jargon, right? And you know, there's things that are called like glides and blends, which you know can make it a little bit more confusing, I think, if we get into that. But it's ultimately just how we bring two sounds together to form a single sound. You know, like I said, if you understand the alphabet has every letter has a sound, a sort of persistent sound, those sounds can then be blended together to form new sounds. And that is what ends up being the bedrock of all language. It's just the way in which we move our mouth, right? Our tongue and how wide or closed off our mouth is. Any other questions about the digraphs or the diphthongs? No? All right. So we're gonna do a quick little exercise here before we look at a poem that at least as best as I could find mimics the exercise. What I want you to do now is to visualize yourself in a setting with unique sounds and textures. It could be something like the beach, a hiking trail, a forest, an intersection, or a flower market. You know, those are places where there's a lot of different scents, a lot of different sounds, and a lot of different textures that you might be able to see. Imagine yourself in that space and write a list of words that visually describes the setting and all of the sensory details that you experience while you're there. You know, write about the colors, write a list of colors, write a list of, you know, textures that you see, soft, hard, jagged. Try and come up with as many words as you can to describe the place without telling us specifically where you are imagining yourself. Any questions? I highly recommend that you have your
Question.
word list. I highly recommend that you have your list of words written down on a piece of paper for you to reference later, because it's going to help you later.
Okay, that's what I was going to ask.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, y para los que están escuchando en español, pido que se visualicen en un ambiente con diferentes sonidos y texturas, todo muy distinto. Sea algo como la playa, un bosque, como puse aquí, una avenida muy transitada, un lugar donde haya muchos, muchas aromas, muchos sonidos y muchas texturas que uno puede representar visualmente usando palabras. Luego hagan una lista de las palabras que describen todos los diferentes, básicamente los 5 sentidos que uno puede experimentar en ese lugar. Y recomiendo que hagan su lista en una hoja de papel o algo que pueden guardar después. So I'm going to give you, let's see, I'm going to give you about 3 minutes. And in those 3 minutes, try and come up with as many words as you can to describe this very unique place that is like a sensory overload. ¿Entendiste, Abraham? Yeah. All right. In the meantime, we'll go back to the music.
Te quise porque pensaba que tu amor era sincero. Me di cuenta con el tiempo que tu amor no es verdadero. Si tú me has visto tomando, no creas que sea por tu amor. Si la vida es una historia y el vino alivia mejor. Te quise porque pensaba que tu amor era sincero. Me di cuenta con el tiempo que tu amor no es verdadero. Salsa mexicana, ay qué ritmo. ¡Ese primo! Esta sabrosura de ritmo es para bailar.
Okay. So hopefully you have a good list of words that, textually, visually, sonically represent your unique place that you were imagining. And, oh, thank you, Mojde, for adding them in the chat. So let's see. Mojde wrote in the chat, green, red, yellow, and white, water, waves, lost, clouds, rain, drops, chirping. I like there's a little bit of rhythm going there, right? With the white water waves, lost clouds, rain. I like it. Thank you, Mojde. If I had to guess, I'm thinking this is maybe like a pier or some sort of maybe area near water. Diana in the chat wrote breathtaking, dry, humid, windy, silent, prickly, solitude, drought, crows, vultures, ant colonies, earthly smell. Yeah, just based on the words and the sounds, it has this sort of destitute kind of sound to it, dry, humid, windy, silent, prickly, that E sound, that sort of the Y is kind of leaving it kind of open and it feels barren. Plus, with the words themselves meaning what they mean, it just feels reinforced, right? The sound reinforces the feeling. Abraham wrote, freeze, flow, constant, salty, cool, immense, wet. That sounds like the ocean to me. And yeah, notice how the word flow, right? Flow, we naturally want to say it sort of slowly, right? That sort of closed off but long O gives us the same sort of imagery of a big, immense area.
I have
And
some.
yeah, all
Yeah,
right, go.
he says
go.
write as many as we could, and I
Yeah.
tried to keep in what our theme is all about. But you say describe a place that we went, and so hopefully you can. Okay, it's sticky, smelly. Wait a minute, I'm in the dark here. It stings. It's rough. It's dipped, shiny, bright. Things, sparkle, wet, long, short, many, tiny, large. What is this? I can't even see that one. Forget that one. Strong, different. I can't even read that one. Forget that one. Wild, bush, charming, lovely, beautiful. Elegant. It smells. Open, bulb, close, and that's enough because I can't read half of it. Where was I?
I don't know. That's actually a hard one to picture.
I was downtown on 9th and
Oh,
Santee.
the Santee Alley, the fashion district.
No, flower shop.
Oh, flower shop. Oh, I don't know if I would have gotten that.
Yeah, there's
I
some
think I
sticky ones, the little sticky bushes, the roses that stick you,
okay.
and that purple flower, that smell, it's beautiful. It's lavender. Oh, it stays. Oh, beautiful smell. And then there's long stems, there's short stems. It's beautiful. It's lovely in there, especially at Mother's Day. It was nice.
Yeah,
And yeah, so they bloom. There's the bulbs. They're wet because they're in water. They're dipped. You can make them different colors. Yeah, you dip them. Yeah, so That's,
Okay, so yeah, I think Miss Lois, you gave us a lot of adjectives that I think the adjectives themselves, like open, sticky, smelly, those adjectives kind of told me what I was supposed to hear or see, but I think there was also maybe some like colors that were missing, some nouns, like thorns, which are the things that grow on a rose, right? The sticky
yeah, I should have
things.
said thorns instead of sticky.
Yeah, because sticky means something very different from a thorn, right?
Yeah, like that
Um,
gulp.
yeah,
Yeah, like from a
it's
peach
like
tree, that sticky stuff.
right.
I
So
thought about it after I wrote it.
yeah, but I mean, that's a great starting point because you have things that sort of add an additional layer once you start adding in some nouns in there, you know. So it's a great starting point, and I'm glad that you were able to come up with a pretty big list. I mean, that's a really
Yeah,
long
so
list.
give me some thoughts, a couple of words, anybody on the nouns that could have been used. So I'll get back on the right track.
Any suggestions from anyone in the group?
Please, please, please.
Can you repeat
Loose.
the
Where's
place again?
loose?
Sorry.
Loose. I'm counting on you.
I think Abraham has some, but his question was where, like, what the location was, and I believe it was the Flower District.
Yeah, I said Santee, but you're right. That's where the clothes are. I think it's right, like probably 10th or 11th. Michael, not Michael's. Well, Michael's has flowers too, but it's around in that area, the San Pedro,
Yeah.
that area over there.
So yeah, the Flower District.
Yeah.
I think colors. I don't know if there were very many colors that you mentioned, but
I
colors.
did. Yeah.
Yeah, colors actually are both an adjective and a noun at the same time.
Yeah, you add the colors of the flowers, and you have to say also green, because usually we think of flowers that have the flower and then the green leaves and all that stuff, as well as the scent. What kind of scent is it? And if you're saying it's a shopping place, you may want to add the sounds of people buying and, I don't know, making gifts out of it. I don't know, something like that.
Mhm. Yeah, those are good observations. There's also textures, right?
Well, I did a rough. I don't know if I said it or not, but I did a rough. So, but
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, and I think that also might apply to like Mojde's, who Mojde wrote about the forest. I'm assuming, based on the comment.
Yeah, when
that,
you read hers and you said green, I was going to write green. I was going to sneak green in my
Yeah.
list. I says, no, I got to be fair to my own self anyway.
Yeah. But like, if you wanted to, as an example for Mojde, if you wanted to describe the texture of the bark, right, on a tree, then immediately we're going to then associate the texture with the bark on a tree. What Diana did in describing the desert, which I totally got was a desert. We had the dry, the windy, and the prickly, and then the drought, right? Drought is a very specific word that when you combine it with crows and vultures, those things, they start to create an image, right? They're very visual things.
Right.
They're nouns, they're specific objects.
Like a rough bark of a tree,
Yeah.
bird sitting on the limb.
Yeah, exactly. And then we have like Rebecca, who wrote in the chat, relaxing, peaceful, serene, calming, expansive, massive, wet, sandy, salty, sunny, warm, delightful. And I mean, if I was to, specifically because of the word salty, I was going to say that this is probably like the beach, the ocean, something near water. And I might be right or wrong, but that one very specific adjective, right, that combines a noun along with the adjective, I think that's how I'm able to then associate it with the sea, right? And also notice the words that Rebecca used, right? Relaxing, peaceful, serene. There's a lot of sounds that are happening. calming, expansive, massive, wet, sandy, salty, sunny. Notice how the s sound gives us a soothing, in combination with the other diphthongs of the ooh and the ah and the eh, like those sort of casual vocalizations, they give us that same sort of just calm emotion or vibe. All right. River wrote some in Spanish for us. Ruidoso, sombras infundidas con colores, eco de voces, difícil. Spanish in itself, being a romantic language, has a lot of strong sounds based on the S and the C, and the two sounds that they make. But ruidoso, the R and the UI, that closed vocal diphthong, right? It has this kind of like tightness to it, right? Ruidoso, a place that's noisy. Even in English, right? Noisy, ruidoso, like it gives you that sense of sort of like tension, which is interesting if you start to notice how sounds in words replicate the emotion that is associated with it. Miss Luz wrote wet, muddy, stinky, fishy, dead eyes, shiny, scaly, buzzing, swatting, ching, shouting, chopping, thanking. I totally get a fish market out of that one. All right. And it's partly because we get the word fishy, right? It's a very specific kind of adjective, right? Again, it actually uses a noun and turns a noun into an adjective to give us not just, the sense of the smell, but a very clear image of what we're supposed to be smelling, right? Scaly, same thing. It's an adjective that uses a noun to very clearly show us what we're meant to be looking at.
Yes, you got it right.
Yeah. Abraham got it right too in the chat. So excellent. Let's see. We do have some fantastic lists so far. I agree with River. Sky ceiling, glass ribbon. Oh, that just sounds like a poem by itself. Thank you, Moshe. That sounds awesome. Let's see. Miss Michelle wrote, click, clack, cling of the circles, filling water to the top. 3 shiny silver objects, triangle beige cloth, folding shapes, the opening of a blind's purple things in water scented sweetly. Pretty purple things in liquid scented so sweetly. The opening of white rectangles on a string. I mean, there we got some like full sentences and things, but again, notice the sounds that are being used here, right? Click, clack, cling, that constant sort of hard hitting sound. It sounds like a very busy place, right? Shiny silver objects, you get a little bit of this and the kind of mixing in there with the shapes and the shiny, and then there's the scented sweetly, which makes it feel kind of inviting, even though it is a busy location, probably like a food hall somewhere, you get this kind of inviting thing that happens with the scented sweetly thrown in there. So again, we construct the words and the words construct us too. Okay, so I think I got it right. It's a dining hall or some sort of restaurant, or a massage. Yeah, I'm not so sure if that would be a spa. But I mean, it maybe could be if you went to like a, I don't know, Swedish massage, right? Something a little bit more rough. But yeah, excellent, everyone. Thank you. Thank you for sharing your lists. So, ¿cómo les parece? ¿Cómo se sienten? What are your thoughts at the moment? Are we understanding how diphthongs and digraphs work? Yes, no? I'll take your silence as a yes. Remember, though, if you do have questions, you feel free to stop me, because these are concepts that, you know, could get a little tricky sometimes if we're not too sure about what we're doing.
I just wanted to interject that for Miss Lois, I would use the word rosy, because for me, it's a happy word. And I always feel like in a flower market, you expect the roses and you kind of expect that rosy feeling.
Okay.
Yeah, I agree. I think, you know, there's certain things that I would associate with a flower market. Roses is definitely one of them, and the deep, vibrant red of a rose. Also, to go with that, the sunny, vibrant yellow of sunflowers.
Yes.
So, you know, and keep in mind, right, vibrant, right? There's like this, the v sound, the v gives us that sort of energy, right? That
Right.
shininess of a color. Abraham is also offering aromatic water buckets. This will also be some other good words that you could potentially use.
Yeah.
And yeah,
Because I said water, but I should have put the bucket or pail or something.
yeah, water pail, water bucket,
Yeah.
the drip, right? There's
A
maybe
drip.
something dripping, right? And think of that, right? The word drip,
Yes. Thank
drip,
you.
drip, drip, drip. You know, that is a word that is also an onomatopoeia if we think about it,
Uh-huh.
because it's a sound that we hear. That is the sound that water makes, and the word just came to mean the sound of water going drip, drip, drip. Right. So, yeah, diphthongs and digraphs, which brings us to My Father's Hats by Mark Irwin. Tengo aquí un voluntario valiente quien gusta leer estos poemas. Either in English or Spanish. Roots.
Oh, sorry.
Sombreros of my father, my papa.
Yeah. Roots, your choice. You can either read the English or the Spanish.
I'll take the English one. I thought I heard somebody reading it already.
Oh, no.
No, I was playing with my memory of Spanish.
Oh, okay. All right, here it goes. My Father's Hats by Mark Irwin. Sunday mornings, I would reach high into his dark closet while standing on a chair and tiptoeing, reach higher, touching, sometimes fumbling, the soft crown, and imagine I was in a forest, wind hymning through pines where the musky scent of rain clinging to damp earth was his scent I loved, lingering on bands, leather, and on the inner silk, crowns where I would smell his hair and almost think I was being held, or climbing a tree, touching the yellow fruit, leaves whose scent was that of a clove in the godsome air, as now, thinking of his fabulous sleep. I stand on this canyon floor and watch light slowly close on water I can't be sure is there.
Excellent. Thank you, Roots. Good reading. All right, and we have River who's volunteering. River, cuando estés lista.
Are you able to hear me this time?
Yes.
His last class, my mic didn't work. Los sombreros de mi padre. En las mañanas domingueras alcanzaba a lo alto de su closet, oscuro mientras paraba en una silla, y de puntitas alcanzaba aún más alto, tocando, a veces hurgando las coronas suaves e imaginándome estar en un bosque, el viento himnando entre pinos donde el almizcleño olor de lluvia apegado a la tierra húmeda era su aroma que yo amaba, persistiendo, persistiendo en bandas, cuero y en las coronas internas de seda donde yo olía su pelo. Casi me pensaba estar sostenido o trepando a un árbol, tocando las frutas amarillas, hojas cuyos aromas eran la de clavo en el aire diosero, tal como hoy, pensando en su fabuloso dormir, yo parado en este piso de cañón, mirando a la lenta clausura de luz sobre agua que no puedo estar seguro de que esté ahí.
Excellent. Thank you, River. All right. ¿Cómo les parece? What is one thing that really stood out to you as you listened to the poems?
I'll go.
Yes, go ahead, Ms. Lois.
Yeah, it sounds like Papa is no longer there, and the thought of smelling his hat reminds them, it's just like if he's there.
Mhm.
And I didn't understand the part about the tree with the
Mhm.
about the bloom or something, but I thought of deeply about how the smell of the hat reminded him of his father that's not there no more.
Mhm. Yeah, that's a good observation. I think that and Mojde has, I think, something that's similar in the comments here in the chat. It's digging in memory, and there is a sort of nostalgia that we're picking up, right? Emotional nostalgia for the father that may or may not be there. Yeah, I could see that. Roots, you raised your hand.
Yeah, what stood out to me was the way that he described the smells. So I think his father could have been like somebody who took him hiking and out in nature and stuff like that. Is what I think of, and how he I like how the poet like intertwines nature, also the scent of his dad. So like the embrace of nature and his father are like intertwined, and I think that's very beautiful.
Yeah, there's like associations that are being made between different scents, right? And as River noted in the chat, that the musk, what is called musk, is it's a scent that is made up of sort of earthy kind of components, right? Which can include things like honey and a whole bunch of other things that are infused in an oil, usually to turn into like a perfume or a cologne.
Yeah, it's come from a sweat.
Yeah. But the way in which I think Roots is sort of describing it, the things that are being associated with the sense of earth, as musk normally is, like that's how that's coming through, I think, pretty strongly. Gia? Gia, you raised your hand.
Oh, sorry, I didn't hear you. Yeah, I was just gonna say, I just read an article that said that the smell is the strongest connection to memory. So that it seems that smell evokes memories the most.
Yes.
But I like this poem because he doesn't only rely on scent. I mean, there's visuals and sounds, and so he really does address all the senses and the textures.
Yeah, there's a lot of sensory details that are being picked up on, you know, or being used to help us place ourselves, and not just the memories, but also in physical locations that evoke the memories, or that are physical locations where the writer is, or the speaker of the poem is kind of existing within at the moment. So yeah, very good observations. Thank you, Gia. And yes, River, thank you. It was actually Abraham who added in the chat what constitutes a musk. And yeah, Abraham, you raised your hand.
Well, it just goes back to that as well, now that you mentioned it. Kind of has that sense of this person is not a city person. It's more like a town folk. That's one of those pueblos that kind of your dad comes from, or you still there with your dad, and gives you those memories of the land. And because I guess the land and the people mix a little more than the city.
Yeah. And even if this isn't, you know, a person that is like out in the country, you know, there's like an association with the hats, right? Which maybe are just the hats that the dad used to go hiking, maybe outside of the city. And a little bit of the outdoors kind of came in with the hats, right? We don't really know 100%, but it is very clear that, you know, the associations with the smell are those of an outdoor area. And yeah, you know, that's I think also just like Gia said, you know, indicative of how strong smell can be in terms of our associations. Miss Michelle, you raised your hand as well.
Yes, I did. That is true, but Gia said that the strongest of the five senses are the nose, because you know, through my employer, I mean not my employer, but in this, you know, I work at, that is something that people, especially with Alzheimer's disease and related dementias, lack sometimes because of certain foods. They lack that the olfactory senses of the nose, if you will, in regards to the five senses. And unfortunately, certain foods that we smell or not smelling can determine if you are a person that may receive Alzheimer's disease and or related dementias based on your nose being used. And also with the long haul for COVID-19, your sense of smell and taste, if you have that long haul, can take time to return. In regards to this poem, I think the description of how he describes his father, the descriptions are beautiful. My favorite line, not one of my favorite lines, but the one that struck out to me was, I was in the forest, wind hemming through pines, for the musky scent of rain clinging to the damp earth was the scent I loved lingering on. Now that tells me that it can be worn on your skin, even though perhaps the father's apparition, this is from memory. That's what I was thinking about. And then he describes bands, leather, and on inner silk, crowns where I would smell his hair and almost think I was being held, or climbing a tree, touching and all that. So I'm thinking, is he thinking about memory as a child with his father, or when his father held him as an infant? That's what I was thinking about also when I read this. And I was thinking about the store called Bricks Brothers. I'm not sure if Bricks Brothers exists anymore, but I remember those hats that my father and my uncles were buying hats from Bricks Brothers a while ago. I mean, back in their day and things. And I was thinking about my father, how he wore hats, and thinking about the ancestors of my family who did have hats on and photographs. I was thinking about them very much when I specifically read that line and thinking about them. That's what brought that to me. And I was thinking about,
imagine that though, if I could just interject really quick. Imagine that this is for everyone, right? The words that the author chose to use in their construction of the poem constructed a memory within Miss Michelle, right? Again, going back to our opening quote, sometimes the words build us, right? Sometimes the words form us, whereas, you know, sometimes we form them. It's kind of like a two-way street in this case, and it's I think a great thing that Miss Michelle would experience something like that in listening to the poems. And I also really appreciate what River wrote in the chat about how, you know, sometimes we can feel the earth in our bones. You know, for anyone that is maybe related to or has had the privilege of, you know, being in an outdoor sort of agrarian environment, you know, for any long period of time, or comes from a family that was agrarian at one point, you know, and maybe still has like a ranch somewhere, you do sometimes have this sort of yearning to want to be out in nature, and you will feel it in your bones, even if it's just, you know, going out into your garden and, you know, working on like a little pot of flowers, right? There is a very unique connection that all of us have with the earth, with nature in that way. And it's cool that, at least in this poem, it seems like for everyone, you're picking up on how those associations of the sights and the sounds and the smells, specifically the smells, are now bringing together the relationship between the father and son of the poems. So yeah, thank you, Miss Michelle. Didn't mean to cut you off, but
Oh, it's fun, and you're welcome, and I appreciate that perception and perspective, because it's a lesson we're learning today. And and like when I get off this call, the Zoom call, I intend to look at my father and my ancestors, because they're all in heaven. Look at the photographs and think about this and just linger in this and read this poem, you know, to them, although they can't hear me, but in spirit they do. Thank you very much.
So one last thing that I wanted to make sure that I acknowledge is, you know, I think it was Diana and Moj that both recognized something, especially in the English version of this poem. The use of ing, right, after the verbs. So standing, fumbling, hymning, you know, hymn itself is not a verb. It's a noun, if I'm not mistaken, but hymning, so turning the noun into a verb, kind of like what we were talking about before when you turned nouns into adjectives by saying salty or fishy, right? Those things make your words feel more active. And that repetition, that active use of the ing at the end of any word in English, it's going to make the poem feel more immediate. It's going to make you feel like you are living it in that moment, even though this is a memory, right? Sunday mornings, like this is clearly in the past. We know that we're set in the past, but that particular sound, the ing sound, that is something that is worth noting. And it is something that I definitely recommend you use as you write, and not just for the purpose of today's, you know, lesson or anything, but just as a good practice as writers, as poets especially. You want your words to, again, construct experiences for us, right? You want the words to form things within us and to shape us. So by being active in your voice and being descriptive in your language, you're going to have a much stronger impact on your reader than, you know, just kind of passively speaking about things and thinking, or sorry, writing about ideas that are sort of up in the air, kind of ethereal. Always try to bring us back down to earth, kind of like this poem did right here. It literally brought us down to earth, right? In the damp soil. So that's where we want to live as readers and as poets. So any last questions or any final thoughts about this particular poem? Seeing as how
I have a question.
Yes, Elena.
For the most part, I missed everything. Is because I was taking a bath. So,
okay.
Did I miss anything?
You missed a lot, but the good thing is that this is being recorded, so you'll be able to get caught up by watching the recording later.
Okay, thank you so much.
No problem. All right. So, any last thoughts or questions before I give you your writing prompt for the week? No? All right. So imagínense otra vez de nuevo en aquel lugar especial, right? Think about the practice that we just did a little bit ago, right? The little exercise that we did. It was to get you to begin thinking about how you can descriptively write about a location. For your homework this week, you will now go to your favorite place to be, your favorite location, whether it is the beach or it is a flower market or a restaurant. Go to that place in your mind and write a poem that, as you can see here, selectively uses words that mimic the sounds, smells, and textures of your favorite place to be. And because we were talking about diphthongs and digraphs, really pay special attention to the way in which the words that you are writing mimic the vibe, right? That emotional connection. If here, the wind hymning through pines is an image that stood out because it really took you to a forest, then try to do that also in your favorite place. If it's, I don't know, the ring of the water that echoes, that vibrates within the glass that you're drinking from, then try to represent that in your poem, right? Take us to that place. En español, les exijo que escriban un poema que selectivamente usa palabras que intentan imitar a los sonidos, olores o texturas de tu favorito lugar para estar, ya sea un restaurante, la playa, un parque, donde sea, ¿verdad? Lo que les guste más, intenten a representar esa experiencia a través de sus palabras. Y pongan atención particular en el uso de los diptongos y los dígrafos en las palabras que están usando para otra vez imitar esa experiencia de estar en ese mismo lugar que quizá fue el lugar que estaban describiendo antes. If it requires going on a field trip, as Abraham is suggesting, then take the field trip, right? Really try to place yourself in that location that you're going to be writing about. And, if there's any other poems that you feel, might inspire you, definitely try to find some. Off the top of my head, to answer Mojda's questions, I can't really think of any other poems that are specifically related to the idea of diphthongs and digraphs. But you could pretty much find that in any sort of songs or poetry that is focused on sound, right? Because in the end, diphthongs and digraphs are all about sound and manipulation of sound, the way that we form sounds using our mouth. That is ultimately what language is. It's just a series of sounds that we are manipulating and combining in order to communicate, going all the way back to even just the beginning of language.
I like Browning and Her Husband, and then The Raven.
Yeah, that would definitely be a good one. I mean, think of like Edgar Allan Poe. The Raven is especially a good poem when you think about how the word choice really creates a sense of tension, in the poem, and it begins to replicate eventually that paranoia that the speaker of the poem feels.
Yeah.
So that is a good one to consider when you think about how sound
Right.
is, again, just creating an environment along with the actual word choices that are visually representing the environment.
Well, I'm going to have to say good night to you all.
Yeah.
My next class starts at 8.
Well, the good thing is that we have here the homework assignment. I'm going to put it in the chat one last time here, just for anybody that needs it. Of course, this recording will be going up on our YouTube channel with some minor editing tomorrow. So do expect to see it up on our YouTube tomorrow. And also for those of you that are fully enrolled, you'll see it on our Google Classroom as well, along with the handout. And yeah, Any questions that you might?
Louis says, there's no more recording, for us, when we do our Zoom meeting.
Yes. There will be a
Okay.
yeah, and you're welcome, Mojde.
Café June 20th.
I'm sorry, what was that, Elena?
So the last day was be on June 20th.
Yes, if I remember correctly, that is the last day. June 20th.
And then what are we gonna do after that? Celebrate?
Yes, we will. So
Cool.
let me finish here really quick, Elena, and then we'll be able to say hi to everyone, okay? So
Okay, thanks.
yeah. So again, this right here is your, third lesson of the current series. We're already at the halfway mark. Next week will be a workshopping session. So remember, if you want to have your work reviewed, please send it to your assigned cohort no later than this upcoming Friday. And again, we don't expect the poems to be complete nor perfect on Fridays. The purpose of the workshop itself is to give you feedback on where you are in the process, and to maybe help you work through any ideas or things that you might be struggling with. And at any point, you are welcome to actually submit work that is finalized. And this also extends to anybody watching on the live stream or who just comes across this before the last day when the work is due, which again is going to be at the end of June. Go to our website, dstilarts.org/Conchas y Café zine. You'll find all of the details there. And you'll also find a way to upload your work using Submittable for the final zine that'll be produced at this point in July. So without any further ado, you're welcome to, add any questions or anything that you have here on the chat. Miss Luz has some short inspiration that she'd like to share. So let's give it up to Miss Luz before we sign off.
Well, I just on Facebook received a really cool post. It's a picture of Bruce Lee and a quote from Bruce Lee. Don't speak negatively about yourself, even as a joke. Your body doesn't know the difference. Words are energy and cast spells. That's why it's called spelling. Change the way you speak about yourself, and you can change your life. What you're not changing, you're also choosing.
Wow, that is great. That's why it's called spelling. Excellent. Yeah, Bruce Lee, the master.
Yeah, so we have to do some kung fu writing this week, all right?
Yeah, exactly. Everybody was kung fu writing. All right.
Thank you for the lesson.
Yeah. And that'll be it for us tonight. Everybody get your kung fu writing in. And I definitely look forward to reading your thoughts, your experiences next week. Take care, everyone. We'll see you all soon. Bye.
Thank you, Louise. Bye.
Bye.